Under the scale, under the scale, under the scales, under the scale, under the scale, under the scales.
All right, welcome to Under the Scales. Today I'm very honored to do a special deep dive episode into posters, the artists, the art, and then also what happens to the poster once it's liberated from the Phish machinery and goes out into the wild. So I'm extremely happy to be here in New York City, in Soho, in the studio of David Welker, one of the quintessential archetype Phish artists, because David had a very early Phish cover, and you did the cover of Rift. Hi, David. How are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me, Tom.
Absolutely. And also in the studio, extremely happy to be joined by Jim Pollock. Hi, Jim.
Hi. Thanks for having me, Tom and David. Lovely studio.
So excited to be with these two artists who are kind of pillars of the Phish poster art community. Also in the studio, we have Jenny Enck, who's going to be able to shed a little bit of light on the aftermarket sort of side of things. Right, Jen?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so nice having you here as well. But let's start, Jim, with you. I mean, you go way back to, you're a good friend of Paige's.
I am. I go pretty far back. I went to school at Goddard College, showed up at Goddard College the same year Paige showed up, and the rest of the Phish gang hadn't gotten there yet. Paige and I actually had a small band called Tom's Sub Shop. He taught me a fair amount about music, playing music. He was always much better. He was finding a lot of other people to play with around the Vermont area.
So he was classically and jazz trained?
Kind of jazz trained. I think he was like music by ear. He could play almost anything he would be able to hear.
And still can.
Yeah, and still can.
Yeah.
And basically, I'd listen to him. I did a lot of drawing then. I still do.
So you're a guitarist?
But yeah, I play guitar a little bit. But anyway, Phish came up to, or the other members of Phish plus Jeff Holdsworth came up to Goddard to play their Springfest, which is their yearly spring festival. It brings some bands from Burlington, and these guys showed up because another blues band couldn't make it. And Paige listened and liked them and was playing with them within a month.
Really? Wow. And there was a time there where they did have the two guitars, and then
they did.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And I used to lug some of the equipment around.
Okay.
Paige, keyboards. There's a lot of equipment there.
And then, by hook or by crook, I don't remember exactly what happened. They all wound up at Goddard, and right? Isn't that right?
Right. Or Fishman and or John and Trey
certainly. Okay.
Did. Mike stayed on at UVM.
He decided to get an accredited degree.
An accredited degree. Wow. Yeah, everyone at Goddard got to do whatever they wanted, which included playing a ton of music, and I got to draw a lot, and kind of like, I don't know, it's like a hippie college where you learn to become your own
design
teacher.
your own major.
Right.
And that's how Trey designed the Gamehenge rock opera as his major.
Wow. Yeah.
Which ordinary schools might say not recognize.
They tell you to go to Goddard.
Yeah. So a lot of your flyers for that people would poster around towns exist, and those were kind of hand drawn ink or pencil.
Xerox, right?
Just Xerox.
Yeah, just around town. And then I moved away from Goddard actually shortly after they started getting together. I ended up in Chicago, but kept submitting art and giving art to them, and that's how the T-shirts and all that started. Trey,
the funny ones. Of course, no one back then would know, about the prominence of Phish and the eventual rise of Phish, and the same thing with you. Had they known, good copies of those little handbills would still exist. There are a
Right.
few, right?
Yeah. There's a guy on the West Coast. I forget his name. He has a lot of the early ones.
I have one, but I think it was a reprint. Maybe someone in the Phish organization possibly
Right.
ran a few off again.
Right.
It's kind of I believe it was a UVM show.
Was it?
Were you
Like
still
in
doing
Slade
UVM?
Hall and
Yeah.
stuff like that?
Yeah, so you must have still
Right.
been doing them.
Yeah. And then, still sending them art
Oh, okay.
all the time.
Early
Like,
Xeroxes. Imagine that.
Right. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's an odd thing.
And you appeared on stage with them a few times, right? Because you were...
Way early. No, like just at Goddard, because they were just always hanging out. No, I forget, at the cafeteria. They
Okay.
let me sing a song.
So early
Oh,
90s?
No, they had made up. And I was like, before they were even on the road.
Oh,
Or
late
maybe
80s.
I toured a little, but
Okay.
they were like just messing around.
There's
I ran
apocryphal
their
evidence
sound.
of you being on stage in a rubber mask throwing out chickens into the audience or something.
I don't remember that. But,
You might want to edit your wiki,
Right.
Wikipedia.
right.
There's a recording of him doing Free World.
And of course,
Doing
and
what?
of,
Free World?
The
and of
song.
course,
Yeah, the show
Steve
exists.
Pollock and I have a close names, and so people often confuse
Yeah,
us too.
yeah.
Even
So
though
Paige is
we're not the same people.
not the same person. You're not the dude of life, and he's not the poster artist.
Exactly. We get that all the time.
Right, and you're not brothers.
And we're not brothers.
That's awesome. And your names actually are spelled differently.
Yeah.
I think he's got an A hidden in there somewhere, tucked in there.
Domino,
Yeah.
right.
Because he's not here, we'll assume that his is the wrong spelling. Could you talk a little bit about your content? Like when I look at your posters, more often than not, I'll see kind of possibly a bridge from the city that we're in, or it's like a cityscape with hints of the locale.
Right.
But often also there's sort of like an absurdist portrayal of I don't know what, almost like a fish with legs or like robots and stuff. Where are you drawing that from, and kind of your style, so to speak, coming through there?
Right.
What's happening there?
I think it kind of changes, and then like sometimes it's relating to like the gig, like I don't know. I did one of like Golden Gate Bridge
Yes.
for San Francisco, and I've done that. I like architectural stuff. I feel I'm doing more of that now. Some of my earlier stuff is more absurdist, almost not even relating to the venue or anything, just kind of experimental, I don't know, figurative stuff. Mostly my stuff has to do with the fact that I'm doing it all linoleum and letterpress style, and that like I hand print a lot of my prints. Like the Baker's Dozen, I hand printed all 1,300 of them on an old 1950s non-electric hand press.
That's incredible.
And it was like 2,600 impressions, because like there's two colors for
And that's
it.
where you and David split. There's a wide difference in your styles, and it's largely because of the printing method, right?
Right.
Would you say?
Yeah. Well, there's not too many lino cut artists doing posters, and the whole hand printing of it is really ambitious, I gotta say.
When you set out, I imagine you're limited by. You kind of want to say this is going to just be a 3-color, right?
Right.
To limit the
Or
amount of work involved.
I do have a guy in Chicago, Bruno Rohner, who runs Rohner Letterpress, who I've gone to do larger runs. In recent years, I'd like to continue to try to do the hand runs. It started when they invited me up to the Great Went, and it was probably one of the first times I met you,
Yes.
too.
Yes.
And you were having a good time.
I
You
sure
had your
was.
big bus there with all your buddies.
We had a big party.
And I was up there printing. I mean, they were like, yeah, come up. And I brought this printing press, my first printing press, which is a bookbinding press, and just printed these posters, like about 100 of each. the Great Went Robot and the Walking Fish,
Yes.
and like they've become these seminal things.
They are.
Yeah.
I've since acquired them, but I had to pay a premium because I wasn't smart enough to right then grab them. What I did grab was also a clown print that you signed and personalized to me, which I still have,
Awesome.
which I treasure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we should tell the audience a little bit about lino cut and what that is. So you take some printing presses use wood blocks.
Right.
You're using blocks of linoleum.
Blocks of linoleum, or it's like uncut or unmounted linoleum that I glue to 3/4 inch medium density fiberboard. You basically carve it. Wherever you carve it is what it's a reduction thing. So you're taking away whatever you leave is where the ink's going to stay. And I put it in my press, make a print. If I do or more than one color, I'll take a print of the first color and then put a blank linoleum block in. And while the print is still wet, run it through again, and then it gives the impression where the last block is.
Wow.
So yeah, the wet block will print in reverse on the other.
Is that for alignment purposes when you
for
carve
like
the next
when you're
one?
trying to register the second color
Yes.
and stuff.
I see. Wow.
And so it's an old printing process. I kind of very influenced by Japanese printmaking, but kind of learned it from like a small Japanese printmaking book.
So for every color, you have to carve a separate block.
Right.
And that's incredibly, and backwards in negative.
And,
Right.
right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
and that's an incredibly intense process.
Yeah.
And you do that by hand, or please don't tell me there's like a 3D printer that's printing those for you.
Yeah, not yet. But I like the hand process, and it gets messy, and people like see my fingerprints sometimes.
I like it. I like that.
Like,
And you don't see sharp edges sometimes. You see,
Right.
in the especially in the borders, you can see like where the colors overlap and stuff.
right.
It
So
kinda-
it's an
it adds.
imperfect process.
Yeah.
So it's almost like I guess it's like the band with like the improvisational aspect of the whole music and stuff like that.
Right.
I did a lino cut in high school, and on the first or second carve, the tool slipped out and went into my index finger, and I gave it up on the
That
spot.
was it.
Wow.
That was it.
Pencils are
Done.
as sharp as you want to get around. Apparently.
Yeah.
I've had a few of those.
Really, accidents?
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, the bloody hands.
Wow.
Right.
Those prints must be expensive with actual Jim
Right.
Pollock
It's actually
blood.
nice in the winter. You get to wear gloves,
Oh, okay.
so you're protected.
The DNA prints.
One other thing before we talk a little bit more in depth to David, but is I've noticed also, and our conversations of late have tended to go this way as well. You're a big fan of science, and I would almost say you're a big fan of alternate science.
Alternate side. I'd
Yeah.
say so. Right.
Yeah, and it kind of comes out.
or
looking-
like all science, it starts all alternate or
Oh,
whatever.
all right, good
You
point.
know,
That's
like-
a good point. You're right. Like astronomy, for example.
Right.
And you have a print, and it looks like two early astronomers.
Astron.
It's called Astron from
Right.
2000, and
It's
it looks
just
like
a dry
Copernicus
goods
kind of
release.
stuff.
Right, and like I was doing it as like I don't know, I do styles of printmaking, and that's kind of based on like these during the Florentine era, the kind of Renaissance era, they used to like have like these things over the doorways of people who are like entrepreneurs, and they'd have like this insignia of like what their family did, whether you're a printer or like an importer
Like a
of
crest.
textiles and stuff like. So it was kind of based on that. It
Is
was
that
like
sort of
these-
the oval above the top of that?
Exactly.
'Cause you don't
that
actually
might
register-
be above the house
Yes,
of like
Da Vinci
of
or
a
someone?
astronomer of
Okay.
sorts, but it was just like a hypothetical.
I see. And there wasn't a specific show or date mentioned on that,
No, there wasn't. Right, I've heard.
but it did say
I-
fish.
The Astron show was
The
unreal.
Astron
I mean, I feel sorry for the noobs that weren't there.
Right.
I mean, it's
Right.
epic.
I always
It's
thought it was a show.
epic. Yeah.
It
Great
was.
show. Outstanding.
All
I
of
think it was on
2000 was the
Neptune.
Astron show.
I believe it was on Neptune.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Well, Dave, my first introduction to you and many Phish fans' first introduction to you was doing the incredible art on the cover of Rift. Now, that was, when was that? 90s?
92.
92, okay.
Yeah.
And was that your, do you have a prior history with Phish, or did you sort of...
No, I don't.
How did that occur then? How did that come about?
I lived in Boston. I lived in Brookline, Mass, in 1989, and a friend of mine brought me to the Paradise Club to see Phish play. It was a small club, and they made quite an impression on me. They opened with Fluffhead, and I think a lot of people came down from Vermont and packed this club, and I felt the energy, and I knew they were up to something right then. And I saw them again. The same friend brought me to the Roseland Ballroom in 1992. And somewhere in the second set, had a little light bulb moment, a little flash moment where I said, I'm going to reach out to these guys.
Ah.
And I was having a show in New York City around that time. I had a couple little postcards printed up for the show. And I wrote on the back to, I think it was the old Doniak Chevice newsletter.
Yeah.
And there was a little address.
So you wrote to that, and probably
I wrote
Beth
to
got
that. I sent them off with just a little handwriting on the back, like, come to my show if you're ever in New York. It's up for a couple weeks, and I love your music. And sort of forgot about it. Like, that was cool. That's all I wanted to do was reach out to them. And was living in Rye, New York at the time, came home one night, and there was a message on the answering machine that was Trey Anastasio saying, we love your work and we'd like to talk to you.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was quite a moment,
Yeah.
And so I picked up the phone, I called the number they left, Paige answered. And, we exchanged pleasantries, and I said, I love you guys, and he said, well, we love you too. and I said, well, thanks, it's so nice to talk to you. And we hung up.
Bye.
That was it.
Then,
it was just like walking around the apartment kind of beaming, like, how nice was that, And then the phone rings, and it was Trey. And he said, hey, hold on a second. We really like your art, and we want you to do an album cover for us.
Ah.
And so he got right down to business. And
Okay,
I loved
right.
that,
Good.
And the next day I rented a car and I drove up to Burlington. I walked into the Muscle Shoals studio where they were recording. I saw the shoebox full of fan mail, and my postcards were in it. It was a truly different time for the band.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Right.
And they came out, they were recording Rift, and they all came out of the studio, and hugs, and we had dinner. And we talked about what we might do, a local restaurant in Burlington. I drove back. I had to meet with the art director from Elektra and get approval through Elektra, the powers that be.
And were you showing sort of early prototypes that you had in mind, or were you just showing your art in general up to that point?
They between the two postcards that I sent them, they said we want to arrive somewhere in between these two. And Trey gave me the concept, which was, someone
Rift.
lying in a bed diagonally, a concept album where all of the songs would somehow be represented visually.
Dark relationship thoughts going
Yeah.
through this person's head.
Nighttime,
Right. Yeah.
And that's where they started sending me your lyrics.
Okay, right.
And I started piecing together the visual.
Last night, in the moments my thoughts were adrift, and coasting a terrace, approaching a rift, through which I could spy several glimpses beneath. All the darkness, the light from above could not reach. I spied wings of reason, herself taking flight, and upon yonder precipice saw her alight, and glare back at me one last look of dismay, as if she were the last one she thought I'd betray.
I started sketching it. I started doing oil sketches. They were really comprehensive. I had a lot more time back then to do sketches. So I did these really ambitious sketches and did about 6 of them.
Yeah.
I was envisioning, Fishman in bed. I don't know why.
Well, because he wrote Lengthwise.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
I sleep lengthwise, and when you're gone, I sleep diagonal in my bed. When you're there, I sleep lengthwise, and when you're gone, I sleep diagonal in my bed. When you're there, I sleep lengthwise.
With his feet sticking through the bottom of the,
Not a pretty
sheet.
picture, though, when you think about it.
Adorable. And
His feet in particular they are adorable.
Yeah, and I said, well, what should we make this guy look like? And Trey said, imagine Martin Sheen having that nervous breakdown in Saigon in Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, when he punches the mirror.
Yeah. So I sort of loosely posed for it and then redrew myself a couple times. And then
So you're the guy in the bed?
I'm sort of the guy in the bed.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. Now, one of the fan theories, I believe, and partially supported by you, is that you try to represent almost every song that you could in that art.
We certainly did, and I think Trey, I mostly spoke to Trey and Mike. They called during the process a few times, and that was fun. And they really wanted me to get all the songs in there.
Nice.
But somehow I feel that I remember that I didn't get all the lyrics. I didn't get the lyrics to Horse.
Horse and Silent, which to me is really one song. For whatever
Right.
reason, they split it into Horse and Silent, the intro part. But that was always one song. But
Right.
so that one, I guess, possibly was added on later in the
Right.
studio or something. So you didn't have that.
I think that was it.
But I do want to ask you, because I love when I look at those posters that claim to have, 100 Phish songs or 100 Grateful Dead songs. I try to find them all.
Right.
So you'd think that I would be able to do, having written a bunch of these songs, I think I'd be able to find,
Yeah.
all the songs if they're really in there. So I'm happy to be here to actually be able to, put the screws to you and find the actual
Okay.
ones that I cannot.
Oh,
So,
yeah, what does a solar garlic even look like?
well, that's not on this.
That's open to
That's not on this album, right? That's Stash.
No,
That's not on this
I
album.
know.
It's
But I
all
mean,
open
just
to
in general,
interpretation.
Well, right, you're right. Yeah.
your imagery could be
I understand, yes.
interpreted a lot of
Right,
different
so you can't exactly know, but looking at the art, which hangs on the wall right to our left here, which is beautiful, whether or not something might have been in there just, for example, I was thinking Sparkle.
Yeah.
That could be in there just in something sparkling.
So subtly, there's a row of pearls dangling
There's-
off.
Oh, a string of pearls.
There's a string of pearls hanging off of the mirror, of the hinge of the mirror.
The pressure builds. You buy a gift. You're hoping that your dread will lift. It glitters on her like a glass. You shut her eyes. It comes to pass. Apologize to Luce and Lil. Converse with Ed. A drive with Jill. Your friends can find you in their worlds. One by one, a string of pearls. Confused you say.
It's so subtle.
That one was so subtle I couldn't see, but the mirror holds the secret of another song that is not as subtle to me, which is It's Ice. There's a skating person in there.
Right.
That was awesome. Horn I can't find in there.
Right. Yeah.
So it's Now That You've Deceived Me, played my name around, hung those nasty flyers in all the buildings in town, dribbled my possessions in a ring around the earth, bought and sold my self-control for less than it was worth. Is this sparking any memories?
And I love when they play that live.
I love that. I love Horn
I
live.
love it. And I loved how dedicated they were to playing, doing the instrumentation live. And I was, following them around quite a bit, listening to it live in 1993, and just was so amazed at the dedication
Yeah.
to really playing it.
Did you dodge my question, though?
Yeah, I did. Horn. I feel like, Wings of Reason, herself taking flight is that female character
Outside.
in the courtyard.
Yeah.
And I feel like, Horn wasn't really represented, but it could have been in that courtyard.
Could be about her.
Where, they're going to meet as usual.
Okay.
I'll pick you up at 8 as usual. Listen for my horn.
Oh,
so that's really conceptual.
That's very conceptual.
That's quite a reach.
So Sparkle, I was going to save you. If you didn't have the root string of pearls, I was going to say that there's trees out there. Maybe there's skin dripping from the trees or something.
There's so many, and I've always wanted to ask you, there's quite a few references to skin being pulled back and injury, personal injury happening. Physical injury, not just emotional injury.
Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, you didn't really ask the
what's
question.
That all about?
Yeah, what's that all about? There's the question. So that actually I can answer that by answering another one, sort of the elephant in the room, and this is about a person who's having a dark thoughts about their relationship. Sparkle, like potentially about the engagement ring, someone going through thoughts and doubts about getting married. Really, the funny thing that Trey was saying, like, you put all these thoughts, these dark thoughts out there so that they don't happen to you.
Right.
So in a way, it's like
your own trial by fire.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And I think just writing negative things down sort of gets them out of my head in a way.
Exactly.
Catharsis.
Yeah, yep. And then like the Wedge, which is on here. And that one, yeah. So that one's like not sort of a dark thing. Do you have pyramids?
Such a great
Limestone
song.
blocks so large?
Yeah.
I felt like
my favorite
the
song.
Continental Divide was sort of represented in the horizon.
I see it.
So, that's loosely interpreted that way.
Okay.
Take the highway through the great divide. Take the highway through the great divide. I'm building you a pyramid with limestone blocks so large. I dragged them from the mountaintop. You need a two-car.
And also, I was thinking that woman was out on a terrace approaching a rift, right? 'Cause-
Exactly.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
I think that might have been all my questions about the ones I couldn't find. Horn.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's the obvious ones, and then, I think the sort of, maybe there's a little bit of artistic license in the fact that, it's the dream sequence is about to begin because he seems to be awake. And then it's going to get a little crazier when he falls asleep.
And it was Trey, I think Trey's genius, possibly the other band members, arranging those songs in that order because they weren't really written with that intent.
Wow.
And it came off so well.
Yeah.
So I looked really good by the rearranging of it. And,
That's like one of their
sequence-
best, most solid like albums.
the sequence, that's when I started realizing how much the sequence matters.
Right.
And even to this day, like, Trey, every night they play, sequence matters a whole lot. I'm more just like, all right, here's this song, and now it's over. What's the next one?
Right.
But I don't really ever think, oh, weird, they played this in the first set, and it's normally a second set song. I never, ever have that thought in my head.
Yeah.
Sequence is emotional. It has an emotional impact. And I always wonder that too. Like, when do they choose the song lists? And you see afterwards or during how powerful it is when they choose certain songs next to each other.
Right.
So that's the first time I've even thought about it in terms of this album.
Yeah.
And how they chose to.
Well, I don't think it would have told the story without it, without the correct
truly,
sequencing.
yeah.
And maybe you would have drawn a completely different.
Yeah.
Well, thank goodness you drew that. And not to leave Jim out of it, you have an album cover as well, of course, the early Junta.
Junta, right?
Yeah.
That was a weird one. That kind of is like a backwards one. I made it with no intention of it to be anything but a piece of square art. I gave it to Fishman when they were playing in Philadelphia at Chestnut Cabaret.
And you kind of left it up to them to
Just gave it to them, and like I
take
wasn't
segments of it?
thinking too, because like we hadn't even gotten to CDs. Everything was tapes.
right.
I made square art just because like
Yeah.
you're always looking at album.
Yeah.
And so I just gave it to him. But then eventually it did. It took actually a while for it to like, become the album art. But then Elektra came to me with this square art and they're like, we want to make this the cover. And I'm like, well, what are the songs, And then I kind of took all the drawings from the front and turned them into the characters of the song. So like it had nothing to do with anything. It was like
until you went back and did that work.
Until I went back and then did the art for the inside liner notes and the lyric sheets. And that was when I kind of redeveloped those characters that I had just haphazardly given to Fishman and turned them into the Armenian man, Esther, her doll, all those people, Fee, all those people.
Wow.
Whoa, you're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and get your breath. Whoa, you're trying to live a life that's completely free. You're racing with the wind, you're flirting with death. So have a cup of coffee and get your breath.
Right.
The Armenian man in Esther still scares me.
Right. It's a creepy song.
He seems friendly,
and
but
I
he's
haven't
not.
heard it yet. I want to hear that one.
Yeah.
Let's delve into a little bit about like the poster mechanics. So do you guys now you're I have several of both of your art. Now David, you kind of reemerged. Did you take a hiatus from Phish after that cover? Because now I have some of your recent stuff, but it's sort of very recent. I have a Philly Man from 2015. I have a New Year's MSG from 2015 right in my house.
Yeah.
And prior to that, I don't have a whole lot of David Welker posters.
Well, there was a decade, really, or longer, where I was working for another artist painting murals. And I remember just even during that time of Rift and Billy Breeze, I did something for them. Going out on the road with this itinerant mural painter, and I didn't really think the illustration world existed at the time. I was very sheltered under this artist's wing. I was sort of his apprentice, and I wasn't really looking much farther than him and his work and everything that we were doing at the time. So there was a long period where I wasn't doing any illustration work. And I feel like, I did enough of that around 2008, 2009. I was a drinker and I stopped drinking around that time too. And I landed sort of on my feet and said, what am I going to do now? I met Jason Kazarowski, and he said, he reached out to me and he said, why don't you consider doing some poster work? He said, you should do some poster work. Didn't you do some album cover work? And, so I didn't know what a screen print was, really, even though my grandfather was a screen printer. I learned about screen printing, and I started collecting some screen prints, and I took some classes, and I built a screen printing studio here. And Jason helped me do my first official screen print job. And then I was hooked.
Now, I'm not an artist. That's a great, okay, now you're hooked and now you're back in the fray.
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
We'll see you, as often as not, we'll see a David Welker print for various concerts. Now, we should talk a little bit about your style as opposed to Jim's, which is much more intricate, almost like, do you start with pen, or how does that come about? They're very detailed.
I think I start with pencil, and once it's to a certain point, we'll try to get approval. And then once that happens, I'll begin to redraw it in pen. And that sort of sets the stage for the screen print process. And while, pencils with gradients and grays and halftones can be reinterpreted as screen prints, I think that there's something more punctual about a pen layer that can be scanned and then burn a screen more readily.
I see. So pen is black or white.
Yeah.
It's either there or not, whereas
Right,
pencil,
exactly.
as you're saying, is shading.
Right, and we've used those in combination with the pencil line. Pencil work can be used as a supplemental layer.
Oh, okay.
Along with some other layers. I have a great assistant who helps me build color layers, and then we put together a screen print from some digital work and some manual work.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then ultimately, I imagine you, for example, I've seen different interpretations, different versions of the same work in terms of color that you've done.
Right. With art prints or with other bands, sometimes they will ask you to do a variant, and then we can spin the dial and do some different colors.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a function of the screen printing process, meaning you can sort of save the color choice until last.
You can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's interesting. That's a luxury you don't have, Jim. Lino cutting.
Yeah, or you could do different colors. You just wipe off the ink, or sometimes
Right.
if you use a darker color, it might make it darker. But you can wash off the ink. You can mess with. But yeah, a lot of times you're tied to design things with that.
And the Baker's Dozen print has a variation within the run. Of
Right,
1300.
like the blue
Like the
kind of
blue.
goes from a
It's gotta
light blue
change.
to
Yeah.
a little bit
It
of
goes to
aqua
almost a
thing.
royal blue at one point. or
Right,
something.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's like, yeah, your hand, I'm always adding more ink because I'm doing it by hand.
Right.
And it makes the variation of the ink occur. and
That's the
stuff.
beauty of that process, that it really does change throughout the course of the run.
Right. Yeah, you try to keep it as consistent as you can, basically. But yeah, I mean, you're working within, a little confines there
Yeah.
that you can't.
Yeah.
And again, that's sort of the
escape.
beauty. The variation is the beauty.
Exactly.
That's neat. That's great. So now you guys find yourselves not competing artists, but you find yourselves among 8 artists that were chosen to represent the
Right.
Baker's Dozen.
No, I think it's really great. I mean, like
Friendly competition.
When I first started, it was like I don't know. They'd have some posters and stuff. Mostly, I was just doing T-shirts, and I wanted to do posters. I wanted to control it. I didn't really have I didn't know how to do silk screening and stuff. So I picked a simpler process that I could pull off. And they came to UIC Pavilion. I kept harassing after the Great Went Robots went so well and people were talking about it. People would email me, you have more stuff. This is like 99. This is like before, there's money orders, there's no PayPal, there's no nothing. Just you got fans and they're sending you, they want more of your art and stuff like that.
What percentage
Kinda
of your
cool.
business, Jim, would you say is poster art related to bands and music?
Right. A solid, a lion's share. I also sell my own art prints and
Right.
stuff. But I think gig posters is a great way for an artist who wants to continue to do stuff. You're always being exposed to new markets, younger kids, or just different markets. And
You have a bunch of bands that you've worked with now,
Right.
including Humphreys, Primus,
Yeah,
Twiddle.
Primus. A lot of, Twiddle. I got this new band, Spofford.
Yeah,
they're
Spafford.
just
I keep hearing about them.
Yeah, they're very
You
good.
got to check them out.
And I'd like to mix it up. Right now, I'm doing a lot of gig posters, but it's nice. It's nice working against deadlines. I
Right.
do the same thing with David. I'll show some ideas.
Yeah.
We both get. I think we probably both get a lot of leeway in terms of
think
when
so.
people are asking, they already kind of know what our style's going to be, and
Right.
so you can just show them a general idea. I usually mock it up using a magic marker.
Oh, okay.
And just shoot a picture if they go for it. And then the last one, we had some different color schemes to work with for them to choose from.
Nice.
And then,
Do you have early drawings of the Went Robot or any of that?
Yeah.
You do? You have all that stuff? That's
Absolutely.
amazing. That's the wow. That's your retirement.
Right.
That's good stuff. So, David, I imagine you have sort of looking at your studio and the art here. I see things that I believe I've seen in movies or not necessarily music related. Like there is almost like a Harry Potter werewolf right there.
That was, I used to work with B&A reps, and I did some commercial illustration work for them. That was for Werewolf Ale, Newcastle Werewolf Ale.
Wow.
It actually was a TV spot. It was funny. It was a funny commercial, and I think it's on the clip is on YouTube still. And it started off. It was for Droga 5. There was a bunch of art directors. You really have to jump through some hoops when you get a bunch of art directors at a big agency like that.
Wow.
And I got them to settle down and just sort of like, trust me a little more. And
That's part of the art is the negotiation.
oh yeah, and when you have 5 art directors and they have their when you're supposed to check in, their revisions, they want all those things.
Right.
They feel like they're paying for it.
Right.
So that was one of these things where it started out real bloody, and they were asking me if I was comfortable making a really gory, bloody thing, and then they got nervous as they approached like the actual making of the art.
You had an actual like slaughter.
Yeah, there was a slaughter going on, and they
That's not great for beer necessarily.
Right. Yeah, I was like, wow, you guys are out there.
Cool silhouette of a werewolf, yes. Actual remnants of the carnage, not so much.
Right. So they dialed back from that just before I went to the final illustration. But yeah, that
Obviously
was
a
fun.
red ale.
That's very
Red
cinematic,
ale, yeah.
that one. Yeah.
Today is the day of red velvet donut. So we'll see what they
Velvet,
do. Yeah,
all right.
yeah, it's a red velvet donut. So we're
Velvet.
we're 2 shows into the Baker's Dozen 13 at the time of recording
Absolutely.
this podcast, and
And my knees are still in good shape.
yeah. Jim isn't the worst for wear, but I already am. My back's in trouble already.
Oh,
So I have to figure out like either just like possibly Advil injections or something.
Or hanging upside down. And,
Yes, oh yeah, the inverted thing. Although my head would just explode. It's too big already. I don't want to make it bigger.
I always wonder how they do it. How do they do it? Like, how do they play all the time? And, it's.
I think instant massage and reduced oxygen,
Right.
hyperbaric chambers. I don't know. I have no idea what they do.
Yeah.
They look healthy
Emotionally
at
and
it, and they
physically, it just
keep
seems
their
so exhausting.
keep their energy
all
high.
right, the juice, right? The Fishman. Then they always drink juice.
The juice, yep. So I guess the point I was trying to make, David, was that you have a lot of non-music related stuff in here, and we're glad to have you in the music fold again.
Yeah.
And I noticed some of your other bands that you've worked for include some of the old school dudes, including the Grateful Dead and Bob Dylan.
Yeah, we did one piece for Bob Dylan, and that was more for Pete Shapiro.
Okay. Oh, current
And
stuff?
That
More
was, current? It was really commissioned by Pete and very tacitly approved or not approved by Bob Dylan's manager. And
I wanted a story of you and Bob, like in a
I
hotel,
wish.
drawing together
I wish.
while he
Yeah.
played guitar.
Yeah, that would have been great. Yeah, it didn't quite get there.
Tell that one next time.
Yeah, I know. I could fib, but it would come out later. So I better
doesn't
tell
matter.
the truth.
Yeah. We're all about the truth here in Under the Scales.
That's right.
So I think you let a number slip. I think this one's available to the public, so we can say it. You said 1,300 posters.
1,300 posters.
So your guys' runs are 1,300 for this
mine is
Baker's
too,
Dozen?
yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Great run size.
And then,
they're still selling like hotcakes. It's great.
That's great. So that number you've seen go up from like 50 at a
Right.
show
Right.
to now 1,300.
Right.
Although Coventry was a huge,
Right.
didn't you have
Oh, right. I
10,000?
did 11,000.
11,000.
I signed them. I signed 11,000 of those.
That's unbelievable.
I didn't print them. I went to the electric printing.
That one you didn't just wheel them out by hand?
Right.
Okay.
That was a beauty.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that.
That's a great poster.
You know, I have a little bit of a spin on this particular poster because we got the poster, we designed it, we colored it, and it came here, and I hated it. You know, I mean, I'm very happy with the original art, and something went wrong between our digital mock-up and the printing. The printer interpreted the colors just a little off, and then the black line art over flooded, and so I made a fast executive decision 2 days ago. I needed cooperation from everybody imaginable, and everybody let me step in and destroy the posters. So we destroyed 1,300 posters.
Wow.
And we're reprinting them right now in California with a new color scheme and attention to detail. The printer said, yeah, I see where we overflooded the line art. So this happens, between the beginning of the run and the end of the run, the black line art closed in, and, kind of between the colors being a little too serious for what it is and the line art over flooding, the fun was gone, and I couldn't live with it. This is like the summer of fixing things. I'm like fixing a hernia, and I'm going to fix this poster. So, it's being reprinted right now.
Hopefully not in that order.
Yeah.
Well, actually fix the hernia first.
Fixing the hernia tomorrow morning. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Fun.
Yeah, good stuff. So, all right. So that brings us up to the present, where we're going to watch your guys' wonderful posters go on sale. Are they already?
Yeah, they're already on sale.
Did all 8 go on, or are they meeting them out one at a time?
2. They released
Two at a
Justin
time?
Santora's and Jim's.
Okay.
We're the first.
Yeah, for the first weekend.
Okay.
All right.
A few each day, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Nice.
And then I also did some prints for Water Wheel. I did a diptych for Water Wheel for the 2 events that they have at the beginning and the end of the run.
And you're doing some 3D stuff.
Did you
And
do
I
a
did a
vinyl?
little 3D model of the art that I did for Ben & Jerry's
Yes.
new ice cream.
Which is going to be...
Yeah, and I haven't named them. Maybe we should throw out. We need a name for the little fish holding the lard.
Yeah, I stood behind the Ben &
Bob's
Jerry's.
Big Boy version of
I stood behind that thing. I
Right.
immediately recognized your art, of course, and had a family picture taken.
Right, and
So
we
I love
auctioned
that.
it off at the first
Oh, you
Water
did?
Wheel. We got some good bank for that.
Good.
Absolutely.
Good. Water Wheel thanks you, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, it's always great to work with Water Wheel. The diptych represents 25 years that they've, or 20,
Wow.
that's right. And yeah, it's just amazing. They've done so much. Glad to be part of part of that whole mechanism that,
Right.
I don't know. That's a very important aspect. I feel like they got in very early into the idea of giving back, and trying to create a nonprofit group and stuff like that. They've done amazing work. I
Yeah.
mean, they've done cleanup work in Lake Champlain that continues to
That's
go
great.
on.
I love it. Yeah,
Right.
and it also just the type of band they are.
Right.
It sort of goes hand in hand. People think, of course, they would have a charity, but
Right.
that's not a given by any means.
Right,
And it's
for
amazing
every-
how much money. Right, and similarly, I think that thinking enabled a bunch of fans a long time to get together and create the Mockingbird, which
Right.
has given
Right.
millions, I think, now
Absolutely,
of dollars toward
easily.
education.
Yeah,
music
yeah.
education.
Music education.
Music
That's
education.
It's
so
incredible.
cool.
So we're
Right.
really working with a special band, and you guys are a big part of what makes Phish special too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a special band. I feel like actually a lot of this, the whole poster stuff went along with the whole band, because the band was influenced by this whole thing called the internet, which they grew up during.
Yes.
And when the Grateful Dead used to have the tape trees in the head shops, and they used to trade the live tapes by like, and then the internet came along. People started trading stuff online, eliminated a huge, the CD market. Digital music came along. People still had money in their pockets because they weren't paying for the CDs, and there wasn't any visual element to bands. And then the poster artists kind of rose to the occasion. I mean, MP3 has a lot to do with like why this revitalization of the poster market, because like it makes sense. The flow of the money just went to this other thing that didn't exist before.
True. Although to be fair though, like think of Bill Graham and the early Dead stuff. There's always like event posters.
Right.
But there was desert.
But there was a big hiatus in between like the 70s, and it was all that recorded music.
Absolutely.
And it breaks up, and then the artists come back. I mean, like all the Haight-Ashbury stuff, it's reminiscent of right now. I mean, like, we have 8 artists being done at the Baker's Dozen.
It's beautiful.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing. You're right.
Absolutely.
Hadn't thought of that. And now that's sort of a good segue into, like I said earlier, we're not going to delve into the mechanics that occur in the Phish machine, which Jenny, you seem to be an expert at, but also probably can't talk about. How did you become an expert at that? Have you been Jim's assistant for a while, or how does that work?
That's a new position, but I've been collecting prints. I bought my first print at a show, a gig print, in '95 at the Fox Theater in Atlanta.
Okay.
And the reason was when you would go to a show in the '90s. I don't know if you remember. Like there's pictures of Trey and how he's swimming in his clothes. That was a style in the '90s. Like everything was so big, and so it wouldn't be uncommon for me to go and buy a t-shirt at the show because they only sold large and extra large. But the poster seemed like a better option.
Yeah.
And so I bought my first poster in Atlanta in '95, and then went to the Clifford Ball where he was and saw what he was doing there.
Right.
And it was late, and he was there by himself in the booth, and I was there with a friend from college. And
you were just a fan. You're not working with anyone at the time.
Just someone there enjoying the music. Broke college. Actually, I was 18 years old. Broke. You've got $10 left. I could use 5 of this for gas money to get home. Let's blow the other 5 on whatever he has here.
Yeah, cool.
And I made the epically bad decision to not buy it. He said, you want one of these? And I was confused. Like, you have the clown, that you have, and it says clown.
Yeah.
And I was like, but it's a fish. But this says ringmaster, and this says tiger. Why doesn't the fish say fish? And his response was, it doesn't have to say fish. It is a fish. And I'm like, okay, hippie. And I walked up the hill and spent my last $5 hand dipping a candle.
A distinctly non-hippie thing to do. Right? Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But like I hear those stories all the time. Like,
oh,
I walked by you when you were printing a great man. I should have.
Right. Well, those posters in particular, those are the ones that sort of skyrocketed and had like this massive craziness about them. However, that craziness still exists on eBay and various other places.
More internet. Internet.
It cost me thousands of dollars to go back and undo my mistake.
Rectify those errors you made. Yeah, I might be in the same boat, but there's someone in this room that wouldn't want me to say that right now. So I'm just gonna say Jim and Dave gave me all that for free. All those old rare posters. But once it's out of the confines of Phish, this poster now exists in someone's hands. More often than not, you'll find that there's sort of this aftermarket where it's kind of like, I think I'm using the word wrong, but I want to say almost arbitrage, where they're trading it to get other posters and doing stuff like that. Are these artists, are these art appreciators, or do they keep them in tubes and use them as currency?
It's both. David can attest, there were people camped out on the sidewalk Thursday to come to his event on Friday. Nice. And some of these people are just here to buy, an original or to stock up on prints because they have to have every single one. And they're just hoarders, and it will never leave. And I'm one of those people that it'll never leave their flat filer. It's just immediately going into a frame. But you'll go to MSG, and I mean, you could go right now probably, and the first 10 or 20 people in the line don't look familiar to you. You know that they're there simply to buy the print and put it on eBay.
Right.
And then there's,
well, let's talk about that for a second.
Sure.
So, like, hypothetically, just let's make a hypothetical. So, I buy a Pollock or Welker poster for $50. Go immediately to eBay after the show and sell it, and I would say immediately it's worth $400 on eBay. Is that right?
A little. I mean, usually yes. If you're capable of being the first one to put it on eBay, yeah, that'll probably sell for the most. But generally, the gig posters tend to settle down.
Okay.
And it probably goes for about 100 to 150, 6 to 8 months later, depending.
Right.
Unless it's an epic show, in
Right.
which case the value will just continue to
Right.
skyrocket.
It's like the IPO. It's like, you know, the
right.
the initial public offering and the
There you go. Right.
Right.
Now, talking to you guys, you're both smiling, so this must not bother you, and I'm glad, because in a way, it shouldn't, right? The fact that there's
Right.
demand.
Yeah,
No matter
I mean,
what
like,
the demand, whether they remain in tubes or not.
yeah, well, I mean, it's people's perspective of it. First off, like, people were like, when eBay first came out, people were like, oh, you must be a billionaire. They're like, well, I'm not trading them, but yeah, I'm doing okay, and
Right.
my art is gaining value. But, like, you know, I'm not making any money from those eBay transactions, obviously.
Yeah.
That's personal property that somebody bought, and it's gone up in value. It's capital. It's
Yes.
capital. That's what it is.
Yeah.
And
so
like, yeah,
from
and
your
like,
perspective, your art is increasing in value. So that's a good place
often,
to be.
Yeah.
Similarly to...
I was saying, yeah, we should, David and I should actually, like, print the Federal Reserve money. We could, like, make it go up in value. It's just a joke.
Secret Service on its way.
I'm thinking of
They're busy enough these days.
Hey, yeah, well, I mean, you know. And it is a currency. And actually, the very first time I saw it being used as a currency, I think, was at Hampton 09 when I made, like, this one hand print. And, like, I literally saw people trading one of my posters for, like, the tickets, which were going for, I forget, $750 or $950.
There you go.
So it was like a ticket. Now, suddenly, like, they bought it for $50.
Yes.
And now it's like being traded in the parking lot for $750. What is approximately $750 worth of ticket price.
Wow.
And so, like, yeah, you start seeing those things.
It's interesting.
I mean, you don't, usually you just see in the eBay posts and stuff, but when you see it visually, it's like, it's a little stunning. Like I said, I came up in this era when all this stuff was happening, and like, didn't invent it, but like, it really had a positive impact.
Well,
on
even
my
though you guys
career.
aren't the inventors of it, you're definitely the cornerstone of this economy, and I think that might be a good place to call it. I've taken a lot of your guys' time.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's been great.
The poster,
Thanks,
I'd love to
Tom.
shed light onto
And
the
thanks
poster.
for Under the Scales. This is terrific.
Oh, you're more than welcome, and I was glad to hear that you're a listener.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks so much, and so nice to meet you guys. Any last thoughts on posters?
Buy more posters?
Apart from go out and get some. Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks, Dave. Really nice to meet you and reconnect with you.
Thanks, Tom.
And thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Tom.
And thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, everyone. So it was fantastic talking with Jim, David, and Jenny. That was recorded on the third day of the Baker's Dozen. At this moment, I just finished editing this episode, and it's Friday of the final weekend. I see show number 11 tonight. I have a perfect record so far, and by the time you hear this, the Baker's Dozen will be over, unfortunately. But what an epic run for our favorite band. Now I guess we'll start thinking about going out to Colorado next month. Can't miss any shows. They're on fire. Back next week with more Under the Scales.